All right, Shannon, thank you for taking your time out of your day to meet with me and kind of talk about the coaching and mentorship that you've received from me. So, before I ask you the questions, I want to let people know what your background was before life insurance, because I don't believe you've been doing life insurance until you came on with us, right?
For the most part, yeah. When the pandemic hit in 2020, prior to that, I had just been working in food service and retail jobs. Then pandemic happens, wanted to split away from that line of work where I was working in a mall or a grocery store. And I went the route of getting my insurance license as a recommendation from my mom, who has also been an insurance agent, but for significantly longer than me. She helped me kind of narrow it down, but I didn't find a place that I liked that I wanted to stick with. And then eventually she introduced me to you. Not only was I satisfied with the job, but I was getting the appropriate amount of coaching and training for somebody who was brand new to the industry.
And what about income? Do you make more money, you think, doing this than what you did before?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say when I was in my early to mid 20s, the most that I made in a single year, bartending, working retail, etc., probably around $30,000. And for me at the time, that was satisfactory. That was enough. I was working really hard and I was keeping a roof above my head, and inflation wasn't where it is today. The pandemic changed everything. I could not survive the way that I was before in today's economic climate. And the income that I've got doing insurance has almost doubled in the couple of years since then. Because again, my cap being 30, I'm making a little bit less than 60 right now. But again, I'm still in the trainee phase. I'm not quite trainee, but we'll call it like apprentice
Yeah,
as opposed to a journeyman.
yeah.
So I definitely see a dramatic increase in my income without needing to work three different jobs to do it.
All right. So let me ask you just a few questions here. So career beginnings was one of them, which you kind of already touched on in your intro. You explained that you had a little guidance from your mom and decided to do something a little different, and now you're doing this. And I would guess I'll kind of just bounce off that a little bit. Probably you can control your schedule more now than you used to be able to.
That has definitely been one of the biggest selling points. Aside from increased income, in all honesty, the flexibility of the schedule is the tiniest bit more important just because of where I'm at in life, because my life is changing day by day.
Mhm.
So having the flexibility to be like, okay, this week I can work every night, but next week I can only work 4 nights, and not needing to worry about if my scheduling needs are going to impact somebody else's scheduling needs.
All right. We're getting into the questions. What about mindset transformation? So, Shannon, can you describe how your mindset has changed since you and I started working together?
Once we started working together, there was the first big shift that I had to get accustomed to was, in fact, switching out of the zone where I was kind of doing jobs that were pretty much like autopilot. You know, you're bartending or you're working in a deli where it's the same repetitive things, and the only difference is what's your order. When I started working with you, I had to shift out of autopilot into, okay, I'm managing my own business, my own life myself. And yes, I have a coach who is going to give me guidance and point out, hey, this would make it a lot easier to manage it versus what you're currently doing, etc. But for the most part, that was the first big hurdle, was shifting the mindset into, okay, now that I have control, how do I have control? How do I take control?
And you figured that out. And now you've got a hold of that where you, rather than your life controlling you, you're controlling your life now.
I have a better control of it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that, in all honesty, I'm 30. I'm still working on getting control, and definitely way more in control of my life than I was when I was 25. And the pandemic happened the summer when I was 25. So that's kind of where I'm starting the grade at. The change between 2020 and it's halfway through 2024 now.
Sales skills improvement. Shannon, how have your sales skills evolved through our coaching session? And can you give a specific example?
So, as far as early comparison in this specific realm, not counting work prior to when I met you, in the beginning, I already had prior sales experience just from working in places like Sunglass Hut and upselling anytime that I was trying to get a customer to buy the more expensive drink so I'd get a higher tip.
Right.
But, but when it started applying more towards, okay, now I'm working in sales in something that actually has to do with people's lives, not something where it's like, oh, you want this because it's going to make you look cool. It's trying to talk to people about, you want this because this will improve the quality of your life. And in the beginning, the first 2 or 3 sales were weirdly easy just because it was brand new and I'm connecting easily. But after the first couple, it seemed like, I don't know, maybe it was the timing of when it was going on because it was December, which is not the greatest time of year to be starting in that industry. I think there was, again, the struggle between adapting to the mindset shift, working more towards a different type of sales focus. And it took a little while for me to really grasp it. With your coaching, it made it so that by the time March came around after the slow season, I was right back to, okay, now this is working again. The mindset's back in the right place. And essentially, every time that I end up needing to go back to your guidance where I'm like, all right, something seems a little bit off, let's pinpoint it. You help me get to the root of it. And then we kind of get back on track. And then a couple months later, if something changes, we pinpoint again. All right, what's different? Where do we fix that, etc. So I've definitely seen a cycle of progress where anytime that I do have an issue, instead of the issue becoming an actual issue, it's just a learning curve.
Mhm.
And then we get through that and continue forward.
Definitely, we all can get off track sometimes, and I'm glad I'm able to help kind of get you back on pace. So, overcoming challenges, this is kind of probably a little bit of what we just talked about. What was the biggest challenge you faced before our coaching, and how did us working together help you overcome it?
I would say the biggest challenge would probably be when I was first getting started with it, making phone calls was probably the hardest part of the job, more so than when you are physically sitting one on one, whether virtual or in somebody's kitchen. Connecting was always like really easy because you're looking at them and you're having a conversation. Even just for the briefest moment where you're having like a 30-second phone call to set up an appointment, making a connection within those 30 seconds, just enough to make them think, okay, this isn't a scam call or a robocaller, etc. That was the hardest part. The biggest part of transitioning into it was getting used to saying the right things. If you say something that just makes somebody be like, I'm going to hang up now, not taking that personally, just being like, all right, I'll call them back in like 3 weeks and they won't remember who I am.
Right.
In
You're
the
right.
beginning, that was so hard to get used to that. I would take it personally, be like, why are they so rude to me? All I'm doing is trying to talk to them. But adjusting, and you realize it's not anything personal. It's not them disliking you. It's just them being like, I don't understand why I'm getting this call and I don't feel a connection. So I just probably think it's spam and I'm going to end it. And with a lot of the little tips and specifically the verbiage that you have suggested to avoid those scenarios has made it a lot easier to get people to stay on the phone once they answer the phone.
Yeah, I think any life insurance agent would agree that the dialing is the hardest part and taking it personal. That is probably the thing that everybody has to overcome. It is a fear, and I'm glad you've overcome that. Glad we were able to get through that. And like you said, the next time you call them, maybe a totally different attitude, right? All
Exactly.
right. Goal setting and achievement. How has the goal setting process we implemented impacted your ability to achieve your professional objectives?
So I'll use a comparison to help explain this. So in the first year, when I was brand new and was still working on grasping the concepts, let alone honing the concepts, my goal setting was pretty weak. And while I didn't have what an insurance agent would consider to be a stellar year in that first year brought me back up to earning what my highest had been in the food service industry. So that's why I looked at it as like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm doing goal wise But once I figure that out, I know I can do it because I've already seen just from 1 year with me just floating through figuring my way out, I
Mm.
still made what I made working my hardest in my early 20s. So I was like, okay, now fast forward to this year on my weekly reports, my numbers for halfway through this year are almost where my numbers were at the end of last year. At the end of the year, it was around the 50,000 point. Right now, I'm a little over 40 and it's not even June yet. So again, looking at the goals that I had set each year where I was like, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep my pattern up. And my pattern has been, what did I make last year? How much more can I improve on that? Ideally, I'd like to double each year what I made the year prior, or at the very least, close to double it. I'll settle for 90%. I don't need to be that person getting the A++, but as long as I get an A, I'm satisfied with my report card.
No, that's good. I think you are on track to double. You just keep doing what you're doing, you will double each year. So that's good. So, client interactions, how has your approach to client interactions changed since we focused on enhancing your communication and relationship building skills?
So, one of the biggest things that I was noticing in the beginning was I was doing great connecting with the clients, but my meetings were way too long. I would need to make sure that I had scheduled my meetings far enough apart from each other that I could take into account a client who might decide that they're just going to talk for 3 hours. And while I didn't necessarily have an issue with that in the beginning, because my mindset was, again, I'm learning how to connect with people. So as time goes by, learning how to make the same level of connection while also maintaining control of the conversation so we don't steer too far into how good Jim's childhood was. That has been one of the biggest things that, again, the little tidbits and specifically the verbiage that you've told me to use in moments like that, so you can assert control over the conversation without seeming like you're being controlling, like letting it still flow but also keeping things on track. That was something I struggled with balancing in the beginning, and nowadays, if I'm getting to the point where, my meeting has gone a full hour and we're not close to the end of it yet. So let me, visit the things that I did and said during this one and see if there's anything that I can improve on that, will avoid it from derailing from there. Because ideally, we don't want to be having 2 hour long meetings. We want them to be about an hour with
Right.
the closing.
Right. Yeah. Very good. So that's important too, to recognize the time. Confidence boost. Can you talk about a moment when our coaching significantly boosts your confidence in your abilities?
So, as far as a specific example goes, I'm going to go back again to my first year post pandemic, struggling to get back to real life. Things in my real life were really difficult during that time, and my confidence was really low. I was struggling a lot with not just getting the finances together, but there was a lot going on in my personal life that I was trying to maintain and stop it from going out of control. And like I said, my confidence was really low during that point, and I was making countless phone calls, and the rare few that would answer would just hang up almost instantly, and my confidence was shot, and I wasn't making any money, and I didn't know what to do. And there were a couple of times that I called you and I was like, I don't know if I can do this because it's not clicking and I'm struggling so much. And whenever you'd be like, all right, so what feels like the biggest problem today? And we'd talk about what that one problem was. And you'd be like, all right, so this is what I think you should do to fix this one problem. And then next week, we'll figure out what the next problem is. And week by week, I would notice less people are hanging up on me. More people are showing up for their appointments. I'm getting less no-shows. And then eventually the paycheck started coming back in and I had less things to complain about, where I'm calling you less frequently saying, this is a problem that I need work on. And obviously the less problems that you have and the more money you make, your confidence starts coming back up. I think that was 2021 during the summertime, because I started, I believe, the fall of 2020 with you, right? If I
Well,
remember correctly.
2020 was my first year, so it'd be the following year.
The following year, yes.
Yeah.
So summer of 2022 was when that was going on. And then between 2022 and now, almost 2 full years later, I can definitely say none of the confidence issues that we were going through back then have occurred within at least the last year, if not longer.
Awesome. Big difference.
Yeah.
All right. Work-life balance. How has our coaching helped you manage work-life balance and reduce stress in your daily routine?
Managing my timing is how it's helped. My partner, who I live with, he has ADHD, so timing is his enemy. And before this job, timing would always creep up on us, and we would never be on time for anything that we were obligated to do. And obviously, that in and of itself would be a massive stressor for me, and then separately, massive stressor for him, and then us dealing with each other while we're stressed. Not needing to worry so much about keeping timing in order because I have my own calendar that I put together myself, and I can see, okay, this, and this are the important key points today. So anything else we got to do, we're working around those key points. And all he needs to do is take the direction, he's fine. And then I don't have to stress because I put my calendar together because of, again, the help that you provided with organizing time. Because any insurance agent knows if you can't organize your time, you're not going to succeed. It's just you are your own boss in that aspect. And it requires a certain amount of discipline to look at your calendar and say, okay, I am going to do all of that today. And I'm not going to get distracted by the mountain of dishes or the laundry that I should have done last Thursday.
That's awesome. So staying on track is important. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm glad that's helped your life. When I made that shift, when I started doing life insurance, I felt like scheduling was everything. It changed everything when I got that part figured out. All right, continuous learning. How have you embraced the concept of continuous learning and self-improvement through our sessions?
Because of our session, needless to say, now I'm a little less afraid to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that? But, needing to take a moment to not be too prideful to just assume I knew exactly what you're talking about and talk my way through it. That's one thing. But as far as continuous learning goes, like I said, I still consider myself to be in the apprentice phase of this insurance journey. I don't think I'm at the journeyman phase yet because while I have gained a whole lot of knowledge, I recognize I still have a lot more that I do need to learn before I'm going to be, for example, at like my mom's level, because I love how much she has grown with your tutelage as well, because she was already a great insurance agent. And I remember when I was a kid, she was working for places like Allstate. And while she was making ends meet, reflecting back on it as an adult, I know she was never quite satisfied with how much work she was putting in versus the money that she was getting out of it. She was making ends meet, but she wasn't meeting her goals. And I have seen her excel beyond her goals with what you've taught her. So when I look at how much she's grown and the rate that I've been growing, I look at that and I'm like, I recognize exactly where my strengths have developed and where I need to continue developing the things that are not as strong, because I want to get to that level that she's at, where she sets a goal and she's able to be like, all right, I met my goal by May. What's the next goal?
That's awesome. Awesome. Success stories. Can you share a success story where the strategies we discussed directly led to a positive outcome for you and maybe one of your clients or several clients?
During the first year, when I had met my first client that had a rollover potential. So first of all, the first time that I sat down with this woman was after our third reschedule. We had first gotten in touch at the end of November when I was still as green as can be. And I called her. I showed up at the Barnes and Noble that we were supposed to meet at. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I have to do overtime today. I can't meet with you. We'll reschedule. And I rescheduled her a few times in December and finally sat down with her a month later around my birthday at the end of January. And we go through the whole process, workbook, talking about all of the things that, she's trying to do, what her timeline is for retirement. And at the end of the meeting, she's like, I'm not so sure if I want to enroll in this policy, but my husband also needs a policy. So I'm going to talk to him when we get home and we're going to meet again soon. And I was like, okay, sure. So I scheduled her, a month later in February. Her husband's not there, but she's like, yeah, no, he wants to do this. So he gave me his ID to bring with me today. And, we're going to get this set up. And I'm like, okay, great. And by the way, how old is your husband when I'm filling out the paperwork? Oh, he's, this old enough to do a rollover, essentially. And I'm like, okay, so let's get your stuff scheduled and we'll fill out his paperwork for the insurance policy that you want to get. And then after we talk to who we got to talk to about the rollover stuff, then we'll talk about what your husband wants to do. When I ended up finally getting 2 enrollments and 2 rollovers from this couple, I was mind blown because it took a process of about 6 months from November to, I believe, end of April. If my math is right, that's 6 months. And in the beginning, the very first time, all I could think was, this lady had me drive half an hour to this Barnes and Noble, and now I'm sitting here reading a book instead of meeting with her. And 6 months later, I'm shaking her hand and she's beaming with joy because her and her husband both got exactly what they wanted to get out of it for their retirement situation. And going back to the original question, which was the success story and essentially the why, like what made that different. I was never expecting things to go that far. I thought she was just going to keep no-showing me. For over a month, almost 2 months, I'd been no-showed. And because you telling me just be patient, don't take it personally, sometimes things get in the way. But if she keeps contacting you, it's because she wants to talk to you. She just doesn't know when. If I hadn't had you in my ear telling me that, I would have given up on her by the end of December because I've been like, she's just never going to meet with me. She's going to waste my time. She was my first rollover.
That's going to be a Monday meeting story for I'm going to have you tell that story again.
Sure.
No, that's awesome. I've had agents tell me, and this person's no-showed me 3 or 4 times, and he'll tell the call center, he'll say, don't call them anymore. And I'm like, I've been no-showed 7 times before, and then they enrolled. It's persistence.
Exactly. It feels counterintuitive to keep scheduling someone that's blown you off that many times. But the fact of the matter is, they still keep contacting you. They didn't block your number. If they didn't block your number, they want to contact you. They just don't know when they can.
Right. That's right. All right. Last question. Future aspirations. Looking ahead, Shannon, how do you plan to continue leveraging the skills and the mindset shifts that we've worked on for your future in your career and personal growth?
On the topic of personal growth outside of the insurance industry, there is a lot that I've taken from everything that you've taught me that I can apply that to a lot of different outside aspects. Like I mentioned, how scheduling affects my home, how the mentality shift has made it easier for me to connect to people. But on top of that, a goal that I've always had since I was a kid is I love animals and I love working with animals. But when I was going through the phase where I could have decided to go to college to become a veterinarian, going to school and the lack of income that my family had to put me through schools, and veterinary school takes 7 to 10 years, depending on what route you go. So I decided against doing that, but I always was like, trying to figure out what I can do in the realm of working with animals. Once I started learning from you, more and more, I started realizing, okay, this career path has the potential, as long as I do it the right way, for me to make 6 digits on a yearly basis. And if I can make 6 digits on a yearly basis, realistically, like I said, I'm 30 now. By the time I'm 40, if I keep on the path that I'm going, if I keep making smart savings decisions, I'll be able to open up my own micro animal rescue. Obviously, I wouldn't be city level animal rescue, but I could open up a micro sanctuary. All I would have to do is buy enough land and put a house that I could live on, or house cats. That in New Jersey, there's quite frankly a crisis at the shelters where the number of cats going in, because there's just so many cats on the street that aren't fixed and they're in dangerous areas, well, dangerous for them,
Right.
getting hit by cars. The amount that are going into the shelters in my area are unfortunately drowning in debt. And sadly, they're euthanizing animals at an unprecedented rate compared to the way that it was before. And something I've always wanted to do with my life is animal rescue. If I was still in food service, that would be a pipe dream for me. I wouldn't be able to afford that. The most that I would be able to do is volunteer my days off at an animal shelter and just be exhausted 24/7. So when we talk about personal growth and goals and all that, my long term is that this industry will help me build enough revenue in my life that I can achieve my dream and be able to do what I want and make whatever sort of a difference I can make for my community and myself.
That's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
We got stray cats and dogs at my house. Yeah.
Right? If I wasn't a renter, it'd be filled with them already.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to have a dream like that. And obviously, I think you're positioned yourself in a good vehicle to get you there. I believe that with everything I have. And I know you do too. So congratulations on everything you've done and what you're going to do in the future. And I know you're going to get that micro, what you call it, a micro.
I call it a micro sanctuary because with cats specifically, and like I said, I'm a renter, so I have not been allowed to have a dog. So I've been a cat lady for the last couple of years. And because I have cats already, my mindset was, like I just explained with the situation with the cat population in my area, working with cats is the easier way for me to start out with, because it'd be really hard for me to start taking in rescue dogs and then finding out whether or not they like my cats.
Right.
That's why I call it a sanctuary, because the term for rescues that focus specifically on one species of animal is going to be a sanctuary. So you got dog sanctuaries, cat sanctuaries, farm animal sanctuaries, but I don't know how to raise a cow, so.
No, that's good. I think that's awesome. Everything that you've said. Shannon, I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you for spending the time with me today and going over these. I am going to let you do something before you get off of here.
What?
I'll let you do a little plug on your wrestling if you want.
You know, it's funny. I didn't know if it was okay for me to mention it, so I deliberately avoided wording things around that. So I am a professional wrestler. I started training in 2019, right before that pandemic. The niche of wrestling that I do is a little bit more intense than what you see on WWE, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But what I am going to talk about is I train under a man named Matt Tremont, who is one of the most decorated, quote unquote, deathmatch wrestlers in the whole world. And while, again, my niche that we work in is not exactly in the mainstream, if you go anywhere on this planet and they watch deathmatch wrestling, they know who my trainer is. They know the name of my school. It is H2O Wrestling. And if they're watching the shows, they know who Lady Blakely is.
Right on. That's awesome. I just had to let you do that.
I appreciate that. I'm going for a belt over this summer. I'm working on getting that championship title.
I think you'll do it.
I'm pretty excited for it.
Oh, do you want to tell them your Instagram so they can find you?
If they dare. So my Instagram handle is bloody_Blakely_H20.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Shannon. I'm sure everybody's going to start looking you up.
Oh, hit that follow button.
Right. That's right. All right. Well,
All
thank
right.
you for your time.
Thank you, Rich. I had a good time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.